Hey, Radio Free Pizza Gourmets. I have a special guest today. It's my friend Brian. Known each other for a long, long time now. Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Good.
Good. All right. Anything you want to shout out, like your YouTube channel, for example?
Oh yeah, Tarot by Fergus is my YouTube channel, and then there's an Instagram page. Fergie Plurgy is the Instagram page. But if you want to see the tarot videos, Tarot by Fergus is the name of the YouTube channel.
All right. Excellent. Well, I'll have a link to that in the show notes. And for everyone watching, you probably already guessed, but Brian is a professional tarot reader. So I thought it would be fun to talk a little bit about what the cards have in store for us this coming year. But before we get to the reading, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Minneapolis because we've met there. It's my hometown, and I know that you were born, a few hours north of there, but we both left. And I was wondering if you could just tell us why you left and just the general vibe, etc.
Well, all right. So keep in mind that I got to Minneapolis at first in 2000. It was a little bit before the pandemic that I knew that I should leave, right? But it really started when Trump got elected, and I could see in the people around me, there was a level of equal parts stupidity and hatred. And it was just growing and growing in all of these people. And you could hear it in the things that they were saying. They were so hate filled and honestly dumb, according to me. But this started growing. And I told my roommate at the time, I'm like, dude, the people of this city are too stupid and filled with hate to be trusted. Like, we've got to get out of here. And he was like, yeah, whatever. So then we have 2020, right? Now, at that point in time, I'd been in Minneapolis for 20 years, and the city was not the city that I moved into. You know, if anyone had been in Minneapolis in 2000 or like 2010 and then looked at the city that existed in 2020, they're not the same thing. So you get the pandemic, you get the lockdowns, all of this stuff. And then in the end of May, then we had the riots, right? Then suddenly, the people that I had not trusted were maybe they weren't the ones that were actively doing it, but they were at least on the side of the people who were burning my city down. I worked on Lake Street, right? And I lived in between Lake Street and downtown. So as these things were happening, if the cops push people away from Lake Street, they would push them toward my house. If the cops push people away from downtown, they'd push them toward my house, right? So suddenly, the people of the city are cheering the people who are burning my city to the ground. And the shopkeepers didn't have anything to do with what happened to George Floyd. You know what I mean? It's like, so the shopkeepers, their stores get broken into, then their stores get burned down. And so I spent, a week and a half not sleeping at night, trying to make sure that no one burned my house down. And I'm like, this is absurd. Like, I'm not made to be here. After a certain number of hours of helicopters directly over my head, apparently Reaper and Predator drones were both flying over Minneapolis during this time. And I'm like, why would I stay here? You know? So then after the riots, the city never recovered. And so I had heard the term urban decay, right? But I never knew what that meant. But if you were in Minneapolis in 2021, 2022, then you might be able to say that you have seen urban decay. You know, I mean, it's just not my scene. So I left. And I now live in a small town, and all of the garbage that I had to deal with in a big city, and I'm pretty sure this is not unique to Minneapolis. I think it happens in most of the major metropolitan centers, at least in the United States. But I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. So now I live in a small town and I don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
That's great. I'm glad that you're feeling better, basically, like you're in a safer place. I'm in a safer place, but I'm also in a big city, so it is a cultural difference. I should really do some introspection because I think that I also suffered from the same kind of hatefulness that drove the riots and the support for the riots. But since then, I've at least taken enough of a look at myself to see, like, oh, okay, this was something that I was baited into supporting, I guess. And
Well,
yeah.
and from what I have seen, the levels of hate that existed during the riots, it hasn't faded at all. It's gotten weirder with the things that people hate each other over, but it definitely has not subsided. So the conditions that caused Minneapolis to go through what it did, including all of the groups that came from outside of Minneapolis to instigate the riots, right?
Mhm.
That could happen again today. It could happen again just like that. None of the conditions that caused it to happen have disappeared. Literally none of them.
Mhm.
And I mean, if you look at the statistics, I believe the cops of Minneapolis have killed one person every year since I've been living there, at least. And I'm pretty sure that'll not stop. None of the things are different, and it could happen again.
Well, maybe it will with the incoming Trump administration. I don't know. There was something in retrospect, it looks very fishy. Like, why did this particular video take off to such a degree? It seemed like it was fed into everybody's social media feeds, at least those who live in Minneapolis. Like, you couldn't get away from it. And so
Right.
it makes me wonder about, it was social media. We probably both know works with intelligence agencies when they need to or when they want to. And I am always intrigued to ponder the conspiracy theories there.
Yeah. At what point do you even drop the term conspiracy theory, right? Because it's like pretty much this is just the deal. Like everybody knows that it's the deal, right? Or at least according to me.
And let's see. I guess that's kind of it as far as background introductions. You want to get into the reading?
Sure.
All right, fantastic.
Radio Free Pizza.
All right, here we go, people. Let's find out what's going on in 2025. Now, the first question is a very kind of long shot, way out of left field question, but I happened to see a little clip from an interview from one of those. I don't know if it was Ancient Aliens or what, but History Channel or Discovery Channel style thing about aliens. And in it, somebody was saying that they knew somebody who worked at Area 51 and blah, blah, blah. And just wait until 2025 was what this secondhand quote was. And given the recent drones in New Jersey, I am just curious if this is a setup. I know that those drones, at least word on the internet that I've seen, is that there was some kind of secret Space Force drill going on. But I'm wondering if it's a run up to something. And any conspiracy theorist can tell you that a threat to humanity like aliens might be would be a good reason to bring in a new world order. So let's see what we got here.
All right. So looking here, and what I'm looking at, I mean, the question of is the drone thing a lead up to something? So the Ace of Swords would say yes, but also I'm looking at what it is leading up to. Now, it's hard not to read military stuff into the Ace of Swords, but the Ace of Swords is taking full responsibility and therefore having full control over what happens to you. It's like really claiming your power. And here it has to do with the Ten of Swords. Now, in the Ten of Swords, this person was trying to hide from something. They were trying to avoid this thing that they knew was wrong, and they hid in the little box. And the swords found them anyway because they were trying to hide from all the swords. And it basically shows something that whoever is doing it, it's meant to take control over something that had gotten completely fucked. So I would assume that this would be government stuff, right? Like the government is trying to maybe militarize, or this might be something about like martial law or something like that, you know? But it's sort of like a militarization here because something that they hadn't done anything about for a while had gotten out of control.
Interesting. Now, there's one other more conventional kind of rumor or speculation about these drones that I've heard. Uh, they may be looking for a dirty bomb that some terrorists who came in over the southern border had planted. Now, that's from more of a, like I said, conventional, a right-wing economist has said that one of his sources suggested that. So, what do you think? What does this Five of Pentacles tell you?
Okay. So this is looking for something that has been exiled. Now, this might be a person more than it is a bomb. But here in the five, so you kind of see the surveillance here coming out of the church. But this is someone who has been completely exiled and is kind of without a support structure, which is what makes me think that it might be a person, but I guess it would make sense if it is a person that has a freaking bomb, right? So I'm going to pull one more specifically to see if there is like a weapon involved here. Wow. So the Six of Swords, this is a soldier. Here is the burning city where the war was happening. And at some point, they just want to leave, right? So I think this would be more about the ship than the bomb, but this would be a person who's trying to get away from conflict and trying to achieve peace. So the narrative of them trying to track down a dirty bomb, I don't think that's the case. I think that they would more like be looking for a person or something else, or maybe literally some kind of vehicle. But it looks like rather than trying to create war, whatever they're looking for is trying to keep it from happening.
Huh. Okay, that's an interesting twist. Early on in that drone thing, some senator or Congress representative had said, "Oh, these are coming from an Iranian mothership off the coast." And then they had, I think the Department of Defense was the one who walked that back and said, "No, there's no Iranian mothership or anything like that." So, huh. There might be something to that as far as the public messaging is concerned, trying to walk it back a little bit away from any kind of direct military confrontation.
So I did just pull a card specifically on the Iranian mothership, right? Now, here's a jester, and the jester does tricks, and people are looking at him, and he's like, well, I better do a trick, right? So he whips out the swords, and this sword, the rope here is about to break, and he's about to swallow that sword. Anyway, what it shows is someone being put on the spot, and they feel like they have to do something, right? So to me, it would say that that person, that senator, whoever it was that talked about the Iranian thing, was put on the spot and pressured to say that. They didn't know anything, and they kind of admitted that too. It was like, oh, there's someone who sure does know a lot who told me this, but they were pressured to say that. probably just to throw more smoke out there, right?
Hmm. All right, gotcha. Well, let's see. That covers the drones. Anything here give you any kind of clue? Are they going to try and introduce some kind of alien invasion threat? Anything like that?
One of the things that is interesting when we look at the cards, except for this Five of Pentacles, everything that has come out here are swords cards. Now, the swords cards can show the militaristic sort of thing, but swords cards are generally about mental energy. So this would certainly be meant to screw with our heads. It's meant to control what we think about and how we think, you know, just because they're all swords cards. It's not about, so if they were cups cards, this would be about manipulating our emotions. But this looks like it's about manipulating what we think about or how we think.
All right. Interesting. I mean, that makes perfect sense. I'm sure that there, as I recall, actually, was Syria collapsing at the time of this drone thing, or was it collapsing during the time of Luigi Mangione being, named as the suspect in the Brian Thompson? I don't know.
Yeah,
Clearly,
I guess they all happened at pretty close to the same time. But just thinking about this alien thing, because I actually saw this in a dream, right? I saw a dream that showed the mass UFO event, but the UFOs were government ships. So I just want to see if this is what we're leading up to. Now, the star reversed, as far as a yes or no, I would read this as a no.
hmm.
I don't think that they are connected.
All right.
Um,
Okay. I
yeah,
guess we can cross the aliens off the list for 2025. Whatever clip I saw was probably bullshit.
at least it would not be connected to the drones.
Ah, all right, cool. You want to move on to question two?
Sure.
All right. Now, this one, I'm concerned about the possibility of bird flu lockdowns. Recently saw a clip with Peter Hotez, one of the,
Oh my God.
yeah,
I'm sorry. I just reacted to you saying that name.
yeah, he's complete garbage. But yeah, he was saying, like, we got a lot of things coming down the pipeline in January 2025. And of course, Gavin Newsom just declared a state of emergency over bird flu in California. So I'm concerned that Trump 2.0 will mean pandemic 2.0, or perhaps just epidemic for the United States. But lockdowns, vaccine mandates, anything like that in the cards?
Boy, maybe so. So what the Knight of Pentacles shows is pattern. So
Mm,
this is about not a disruption to pattern, though. This is about pattern. So I got to pull one more on this because this could go one of two different ways here.
yeah.
So let's see. So Trump administration, pandemic number two, is that a thing? Now, what I would see out of this, the Knight of Pentacles is like structure, discipline. It's like an boot camp, right? Kind of having a very rigid thing and you kind of do the same thing every day. And the reversed Seven of Cups. So the Seven of Cups is like artistic, creative energy. When this is upside down, it's very much logistical, like nuts and bolts. So what I think is happening here would be the preparation for that, but probably not the actual thing. So it would be going through the things that they would have to get the logistics ready for pandemic number two, keeping in mind that they just had some practice, right? So whatever, if the people didn't behave in the ways that they wanted, or if they couldn't control the things that they wanted to control, this would be the preparation for them being able to do it better or to do it right, according to them, right?
Uh-huh. That's a shame.
So preparations and logistics for pandemic number two.
Okay. Well, that seems to, yeah, that squares with me. And as far as I know about the current bird flu variant, it does not yet have human to human transmission. So maybe they will need a new variant for that to really take off. We'll see.
Which I'm sure is in the works, right? Or is probably made, right? But they just haven't released it yet because here they wouldn't have their, you know, the trenches dug or whatever.
All right. So let's see. Next question is quite a bit more, we'll just say like realistic, I want to say, but I'm showing a lot of prejudice there. Will the United States go to war with Iran on behalf of Israel or in partnership with Israel in under Trump or in 2025?
Oh, so hold on. That looks like it's probably a yes. Now, it's interesting. So I pulled this card on the top because these two, this would be a yes, but there's some weird condition over here for it. And up on the top, I was just trying to find out the magnitude of the conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran, and we get the emperor. So the emperor is about control. Now, here's the deal. This wouldn't necessarily say that there would be a huge conflict. This would say that the United States and Israel would control Iran, right? So maybe that happens real quick. Maybe it happens through diplomacy, but I doubt it. But this would say that the United States Israel thing would control Iran. And it doesn't look like it's about explosions and stuff, although that might happen. But this would just show the domination and control. Now, here, the Eight of Wands is about pulling the trigger on something that has been growing for a long period of time. Like you grow crops and they grow and they grow and they grow. And then here is harvest time. So it happens quick, but it's been coming, right? It's been growing for a while. Now, the condition for it, the Five of Cups is this old married couple. It would basically show two entities or countries or whatever that had been together and they came apart because they'd been together too long or whatever. Now, when this turns upside down, it's a reunion of these two things that had been united before. So there is some sort of reunion of two countries or whatever that have a history and a relationship, but here they come back together, and that is the signal for the harvest. And I do believe that this ends with the United States Israel forces controlling Iran.
Interesting. As far as that Eight of Wands is concerned, like Benjamin Netanyahu was writing papers and or giving interviews in the 90s about the need to take out Iran.
Right.
Interesting. I wonder what the condition might be as far as that Five of Cups, because that could be Iran. Oh gosh, it could be Iran having some kind of rapprochement with Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, like they're already having, or it could be something else. But what do you think about this tower?
So here I'm just trying to find any clue on this reunion.
Oh,
And so the tower now, like 9/11, right? And any sort of bickering that would have stopped after 9/11. Now, we saw this domestically in the United States for like 6 months or whatever, right? When the right and left or whatever stopped fighting each other and then they were all united. This is that kind of thing. So we have some sort of explosion or attack. I mean, I am thinking something like a 9/11 kind of situation here. And it brings these two countries or whatever that had been apart, it brings them back together. And that is the signal to go ahead here. So theoretically, so hold on. I'm going to ask one more because I am unclear if this reunion is on the Israel United States side or if it's on the Iran side, right? Or some other side that I am
Possibly Russia.
unclear. I might need your assistance in this. So the Nine of Wands is about how much hope you have that the future can be different than the past. So this would show, this would have been some sort of pure connection at some point in time.
Hmm.
And they had kind of felt stuck or whatever, right? And this is just like at some point they just through hope and believing that these two energies do come back together. Now, it is striking me kind of like what you say of Russia and Ukraine. It would be like that if they genuinely like wanted to reconnect. But here it happens because of some sort of 9/11 style attack.
That's interesting. I brought up Russia, Ukraine because I think that an end to that conflict would be like a go ahead for the military industrial complex. Like, okay, we need another major engagement.
Right.
But
that makes sense to me. If that gets iced over or they stop the open conflict, then where are all these troops going to go? Where are they going to blow up all the bombs and stuff, right? And that would be, oh, over here, you know?
yeah, well, it'd be interesting if that semi-reunion between Russia and Ukraine was the result of a disaster like the tower usually signifies. Like
And
potentially. Go ahead.
and I truly don't know enough about world geopolitical stuff to be able to truly translate this. So through time, it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out, to see what this was talking about.
All right, we'll put a pin in it and talk about it later, maybe.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, it does look like United States, Israel controlling Iran.
Okay, let's move on to the final question for today. Uh, this one is a real kind of 50-50 situation for me because since the Civil War movie and just the general untenability of American civil society, like not getting along anymore, a civil war has seemed increasingly likely. And that's not necessarily two armies facing off against each other, but unrest at a severe enough scale that it necessitates, okay, the West Coast needs to become its own country. The Midwest and Rockies need to become their own country, etc. However, we have Trump now telling Trudeau in Canada, like calling him governor and telling Canada it should become the 51st state. And I think he said something similar about Mexico. There's a growth of new North American Union style dialogue in the public consciousness. And I hadn't been hearing about North American Union since probably before Trump. That really took a back burner in conspiracy circles. So I'd love to see what that's all about.
So I'm pulling a card for Union here, and I'll pull a card for Fracture over here.
All right.
Just to see our likelihood. Now, okay.
Ooh.
The Eight of Cups is basically walking. At first, when I looked at this, I'm thinking no. And I'm still kind of thinking that. However, as I look deeper into the card, this is a process. So the Eight of Cups, this stack of cups here, basically represents old emotional trash. And it's like old emotional garbage that she has carried with her for years. And at this point, she realizes she's already learned whatever she's going to learn from this. She's already suffered. So she's like, whatever, I'm just letting this go. Now, before it would basically say that before there would be a union, that some things would have to be let go of. And that letting go process, it's a process. That letting go thing, it is a process. So first, this would have to happen. And it's interesting that it shows up as emotional toxic baggage, but this might be just between the governments or the maybe the leaders of the governments or something, but they would basically have to get over themselves, and there is a process that's involved there. So this isn't a no, but it would say that this probably wouldn't happen right away. Now, interestingly enough, the hangman says the same thing. So when I look at the fracturing, the hangman is a timeout, right? The, this would say that plan or whatever, that energy is basically currently on ice. And it happens, the hangman happens when a person is trying to get a different perspective of something. It's like shit was moving too quick, and they're like, okay, I've got to look at this from another view. And here, this is the process of taking a step back, binding yourself so you're not interacting with the thing anymore, just so you can get another sort of view of what is happening. So the hangman, the forces that would want to fracture the United States are in a timeout, and they're just sort of taking a look at this stuff. It's like reviewing the tape after you throw an interception, right? That's basically what is happening here. So this is also not a no, and it would show that there are energies that are trying to make that happen, but they're currently not active. They're replanning or whatever, reviewing the tape.
Interesting. All right. What I'm kind of getting, and I'm not a tarot reader by any stretch, but I'm getting the impression here that the fracturing of the United States and the hanged man, that's something that's on hold, but it's also, in a sense, I'm thinking like it might be a prerequisite for the eventual North American Union. Like you need to have
Right.
a sort of division, and then everything can come together with even more attached to it, Mexico and Canada, etc. So, what do you think
I'm
about
just
that?
gonna. So I just pulled a card to see how these two would connect. So we've got the fracturing and the union. Oh, I should note that the devil is peeking out on the bottom here. But the high priestess. The high priestess is really tough to read. I mean, it isn't tough to read. The high priestess is about secrecy. But the high priestess, her arms are crossed in front of her heart because she's protecting whatever it is that is her plan or like her personal spirituality or whatever. But the high priestess is saying that the way that these two connect would essentially be through secrecy, secret societies, maybe. But you could, I mean, what, New World Order, Illuminati, like whatever the hell you would want to call this sort of secret group energy. But that is where they would connect, which to me would validate what you were saying. One might have to happen in order for the other to happen. But in either one of those cases, it would be planned by these same people.
Oh, geez. Okay. Let's see. We still have a few minutes left on my free Zoom subscription. I'm wondering if there are any, along this trend of trying to forecast 2025, is there anything else that you would like to read into besides the four questions I've asked so far?
Let's just see what the cards have to say. Um, big things or whatever that would be on the way in 2025. Let's just see what we get. All right, this is probably a hopeful card. Now, the Seven of Wands is showing someone coming out of restriction. So here, I'm putting a card to see what they're coming out of, and then we'll put another card to see what they are moving toward. Wow. So look at this. So we've got the Seven of Wands. So this is this dark and scary force that they've been stuck in forever. And just through guts and not giving up, they eventually find their way out of it. Now, what they're finding their way out of is inheritance. This is legacy. It's the way that things have always been done. This would basically be the world that we've inherited. Now, what they move forward to is the reversed Hierophant. So the Hierophant is structure and tradition. The Hierophant reversed is the opposite of that. It's destroying the structure and tradition. Now, this might be a representation of the Trump administration. At the very least, this is a real representation of what the Trump administration says that they're about, right? And this is actually going against tradition and upending these energies that have been there forever, the way that things have always been done, right? And going away from legacy and toward bringing it down. So that's interesting. So we've got this happening in some way.
I agree. That is interesting. And I hope that we're not, being misled by demons in the cards or something along those lines. But it also squares quite a bit, like that economist I mentioned much earlier in this conversation. He also has this model that says that 2032 is going to be a very big year globally. Like we will have the opportunity to reestablish new governments. He refers to it, I believe, as the end of republics, like the republic model of government is going to go away. And fingers crossed, but who knows, we can get to more of a direct democracy style of government. It's hard for me to imagine exactly how this would come about via the Trump administration, but I can definitely see why you mentioned the Trump administration here. Like the DOJ department that the Vice President Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, et cetera, are trying to establish, that definitely has a going against tradition. And that particular tradition of administrative bloat and corruption is something that would be great to undo. I'm not entirely excited about a couple of oligarchs being the ones to decide what we do instead, but nonetheless.
Yeah. Well, and I do not pretend to believe anything that any of them say, right? But one of the examples I think of this would be like supposedly they're going to try to take fluoride out of the public water supplies.
Oh, yeah.
That would be an example of this, right? Sort of upending this tradition that had been there for a while. We'll see if they actually do it, but that would be some sort of example of this, I think. Maybe on a much smaller scale.
All right. Well, fingers crossed on that, definitely. And I hope other good things come about too.
Yeah. Yeah, time will tell. It'll be interesting to see the different ways that this manifests. But theoretically, this would be a global type of energy.
Okay. Well, then maybe I'll send this video to Martin Armstrong, that economist I was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hey, that's everything I've got, and I hope that this has given us and our viewers a little bit of a preview. Hopefully it's accurate. Well, gosh, in some cases I hope it's not accurate, like war.
For sure.
I don't know. I think especially as far as the Civil War versus North American Union, seeing that as more of a process, like one step, two step, that actually seems quite a bit more likely to me the more I think about it. So we'll see.
Yeah, time will tell.
Yeah. Okay. That's everything I've got. And one more time. So you have a YouTube channel, which is Tarot by Fergus.
Tarot by Fergus.
Tarot by Fergus. All right, fantastic. Well, I hope to do this again sometime, like maybe in June. We just see how things are going.
Yeah, that sounds, and we'll see, we'll see as the dust settles, if it ever does, what we had going on in what the cards were showing here. That might give us a better clue as to what is coming,
Yeah,
right?
that definitely, this feels like much more of a long-term sort of, not just 2025, but over the next decade, how things will be playing out. So,
Right.
yeah.
Peace.
Peace, my friend. Have a good year. Talk to you again soon.